Hearing all these other discussions, I think it's appropriate to talk about what's happening in SEIU 1021. I know people talked about you can overthrow the current regime and things will get better. Well, we had that overthrowing and things didn't get better, right? So you exchange one group of people with another group of people. This group of people had one problem and the one we have now has another problem. But I will say that I am an activist. I have been one of those people that's not afraid to challenge the people that are in leadership. As a matter of fact, I ran for the VP of San Francisco. Without any campaigning at all, I only lost by 133 votes. So that tells you what the membership is thinking, right? They want change, and maybe I should have pushed harder, but I didn't, because I have a job, and my job didn't allow me to take off time to go campaign. And this person was on full-time release from the union. So anyway, what I will say is that our union has gone through a lot of changes because we were 3 separate unions that the International decided they were going to make into one union. So that's where the 10-to-1 came from, right? So we had UHW people, of which I was a UHW member. They had local 790 members and 535 members. And they merged us all into one. Now, when they merged us all into one, all of the people they put in power were all 790 people, right? When we had our next election, the same thing. A majority of the people that are in power are these same people. Now, what's happened to our union, it's become very corporate-minded, right, in how they want to run things. And if you heard about it, there's the workers for the union have a big battle going with the union about contracting out their jobs because they've gone to hiring all these consultants rather than using the staff that they have that have these skills. So I'm saying that to say there's some things that are bad about our union, right? But on the good side of our union is that they came in with this motto, member-driven, member-run, right? Now, in the beginning, they really acted as if they really didn't mean that, right? But some of us, we held them to it, right? You're member-driven, member-run. That's part of the problem here at City College, right? The chapter president said this is the way it's going to be, so this is the way it's going to be. I'm the chapter president at San Francisco General. If I don't want something to happen to my membership, it doesn't. But we had an incident, and I'll say this has been the thing that got me the most active of all. We had an incident where they wanted to, the city for a long time has been trying to take money out of our pockets to pay more into our pension. Now, one of our benefits was employee paid pension, right? And that was our benefit for years. We had employee paid pensions. So they kept coming to us every bargaining. I've been on the bargaining team. They've been trying to get us to agree to pay 7.5 of our pension. And every time we told them no. And we fought to the end, and we said no, because we're very strong when we fight, and we generally don't give up things that we really don't want to give up when the membership decides to say no. But what they did was they started this through the San Francisco Labor Council. It's called the Public Employees Committee. It's made up of a Public Employees Committee, and it's made up of a lot of different unions, right? And so they came together and they cut a deal with the mayor that they were going to put something on the ballot, which was Proposition C, that would start us paying into our pension. Now, not only did it start us paying into our pension, it started at 7.5%, and I'll tell you, to date, I'm up to 13%, right? And there's no limit to how high it can go, because it's based on some weird formula that they put in place. So our union this time doing bargaining, this time the same committee came to us saying, well, you know, you guys need to give up your employee paid health care. Now, when we went into bargaining, I'm on the bargaining team, right? So I just came in the door, and people kind of listen, because they know that, I ain't for the BS. But it's like, I said, no, I just started off with the management. When they started bringing up anything about the PC, I said, hell no, we ain't giving up shit. So I'm telling you right now, don't even come to us with this crap. They tried everything in the book to get us to go along with this giving up our health, but we held it, and we kept it. And we ended up getting raises, too, on top of it. So we got part of the money for the pension back, too, on top of that. So at the end of all this, we end up 0.5% less than where we started. We're still not ahead, but at least we're catching up by the end of this contract. So, and 1021 has taken a different attitude with our BART, because the BART is a part of our union, too, the BART workers that were on strike. And the workers themselves are rising up against the leadership in our union and saying, we ain't taking any more. We ain't listening to you anymore. We don't trust you anymore. You're going to do what we tell you to. And so that has really been catching on, not just in San Francisco, but in a lot of other places within SEIU 1021, which is a good thing. And so one of the things I've been trying to do is try to bring other people into our union so that we have a united front to attack some of these social issues that are out here that we need to be attacking, right? So I've tried different things, starting different groups. We started the Black Employees Association because there's so much of that going on. There's a lot of African-American employees that work for the city that go through a lot of stuff, and it's quiet, and it's the dirty little secret, and nobody talks about it, and it needs to come out. So we're starting to try to bring things like that out. So I am glad to be here. I've been very educated about what's going on in the school district. If you go by what my union told me about what was going on at City College, it's very different than what I heard here today, right? And I think that's that's why these kind of things are so important, and that we need to go out all over educating people, because people just don't hear the truth, right? You know, they hear what the story, just like the professor was saying about that Harvard class, right? You're going to hear what we want you to hear. You're not going to hear the truth. You're not going to be able to make a decision. I'm a believer. I'm not going to tell people how to vote. I'm not going to tell people what to do and what not to do. I'm just going to give you the facts and count on you making a logical decision on your own. And that's all the membership want. We don't need to be spoon-fed stuff of how we should think, about what we should believe, who we should trust, who we should vote for, and all of that. So even though I'm a political co-chair, I still don't push that. I just give people the facts, and bad or good, right? Tell them the good and tell them the bad, and then it's up to them to make a decision. But I'm glad to be here today. And if anybody has any other questions, and one of my main issues is workplace bullying. We had a situation where we had an interpreter. Now, she speaks 5 languages, and she's there to interpret for the patients at San Francisco General Hospital. So she had this supervisor. He wasn't even a manager yet, but he was a supervisor that, you know, just treated her horribly to the point to where she had physically ill, right? She was physically ill, had skin problems, all kind of problems related to how she was treated at work. So, you know, I went to the union route, we went to that, the union wouldn't do anything, and so my thing is the union has got to start taking workplace bullying seriously, right? They have to start taking discrimination seriously. And one of the problems we have is, just like you said, there are problems of discrimination and racism within unions. And it's not being talked about, and it's not being addressed. It's a very complicated subject. It's not very uncomfortable for everybody involved to talk about it. But I think until that conversation happens, not just in our union, but in this country, things won't necessarily get better, because things will continue to get swept under the rug. They'll be called something else. It won't be they won't call it what it really is. They'll think of some other name to call it, and the real issue never gets dealt with. So it's my hope that, you know, all of these disparities in this country is outrageous. People would not believe, even in San Francisco, if you're born in the Bayview district or you're born in the Marina, you're probably going to live 15 years longer if you're born in the Marina than you are if you were born in the Bayview district and stay there and live there. And that needs to change. And the healthcare system, the ACA, one of my job is I'm a supervisor and a manager of a clinic, right? The adult primary care clinic at San Francisco General Hospital, which is one of the bigger clinics and we do specialties too. So what I'm seeing with the implementation of ACA, people have no idea in the changes that are happening with ACA. Now, some of them are good, right? The fact that people have electronic records, that so if they get hurt anywhere, somebody will have access and they'll probably get better care. But then there's all these other little things that people aren't seeing. The pressure put on the doctors. The doctors feel a lot of pressure, right? And we've lost a lot of good doctors to the implementation of ACA here at San Francisco General. Now, we're fortunate because we're hooked up with UC. So we have a steady stream of new, highly educated, highly motivated providers that keep coming in. But, you know, the people with the longevity and the knowledge that needs to be passed down to these people about how to be a good doctor and not just be a corporate doctor and not just sit in front of a patient like this when you're talking to them, okay, so what's your problem today? And it happens. I see it. It happens. They'll be talking to the patient, they'll be like this the whole time, barely even looking at the patient. And a lot of patients complain about that. So that's the bad side of all this computerized medicine that's going on. So I just hope people pay more attention to that, and this is my hope, that people will pay more attention to the implementation of ACA. There's a lot of money that's been bought into public health in San Francisco to implement ACA for computer systems, to hire extra staff, all this stuff, because they want this to be successful, right? But what they're not telling people is 5 years from now, that money goes away. Then what? You have all these extra employees you hired. You have this enormous computer system you have to maintain. And so where's that money going to come from? Nobody's been able to answer that yet. And so our fear as employees, it's going to come out of our pockets. That, you know, 5 years from now, when they go into bargaining, that they're going to be asked to pay for it, the people that work for the city. And I don't think that that should be. The city needs to work out something that's reasonable. And they shouldn't be implementing things that are unsustainable. And so we don't want to have to pay for that. So we hope the public will pay very close attention to ACA, how it's being implemented, start going to the Health Commission meetings so you can hear what's really going on and not just, like I said, taking their word for what's going on. A lot of people would be very upset if they really knew everything that was going on in public health. So the workers there, I've been there 35 years, right? But I see a new generation of people coming. It's just a job. You don't see that same kind of care for the patients that you used to when people got into public health, because that's what they really wanted to do. The economy has made it so a lot of people go into public health because it pays well. And that's making a difference in the system of a whole.
I am a paramedic, and I also am a I'm a supervisor. I work for the Oakland Fire Department as my job classification is an EMS coordinator and a UM2. And so what that means is I have the assignment of overseeing the medical training for the Oakland Fire Department. And in February 2013, I was notified that we would have a new supervisor. And it was a retired chief, one of the chiefs, like a battalion chief or deputy chief from San Jose. And a lot of firefighters were coming to me with concerns about this individual and their past, and they were bringing me articles and stuff like that. And so what I would come to learn from this individual is that as a city employee of San Jose, he worked with a private-public partnership with America's largest transport provider, American Medical Response, to get a requisition for payment, RFP, for a county contract for ambulance transport in this private-public partnership. Well, that didn't work out, but because of that creative relationship, when he retired from San Jose, he became a contractor, and he contracted himself to the largest ambulance company in America, American Medical Response, and worked with them in their education arm, NCTI, to look at privatizing, farming out training and transport for fire departments across America, meeting with city administrators and fire chiefs. And then he ended up, Mayor Kwan got elected of the city of Oakland. She put into place Chief Reed, and that was kind of a celebrated appointment, first African-American female chief of the department, and rightfully so, because the department, fire department, police service do not have the best history of diversity at all. But San Jose has a history of union busting and having not very good representation in unions. So continuing the tradition of hiring your friends, sorry, I skipped out a step. Mayor Kwan puts Deanna Santana from San Jose into city administration office, very un-union friendly. Deanna Santana puts Chief Reed into place from San Jose. Chief Reed puts her friend Stuart McGee, who becomes my direct supervisor. This is an individual. And he makes it clear that he wants to outsource training, and that happens to be my job. And so I'm quietly, in spring 2013, I'm quietly paying attention and trying to kind of figure out what's going on here, what the lay of the land is. And when he puts this presentation forward about outsourcing, he's very careful to use a model that is, the pricing is based on a nonprofit that's now defunct, San Francisco Paramedic Association. And so then he's looking at this model, and I'm confused because even in his model, it costs $100,000 more than it costs city employees to provide this training. And then I overhear him talking to the firefighters union, and when he's in meetings with them, he doesn't use SFPA as an example, San Francisco Paramedic Association. He uses NCTI, who is the agency he used to contract with. So I correlate that to the equivalent of, the sort of relief you feel when you suspect your friend has been stealing from you, and then you find your stuff at their house. It does kind of make you feel better, but at the end of the day, it's kind of this grim sort of feeling better. And so I went on record and I sent him an email saying, I overheard this. I want you to know that I'm going on record that I oppose your model, and I think you should recuse yourself from any future arrangement. And he pretty much, in my opinion, to throw the legalese in there, my impression was he lost his mind. He held me after work, yelled at me for like an hour, started to use coercive tactics, you owe me an apology sort of thing. So where did we go from there? Oh, I drafted a resolution against it. Oh, I tried to bid. I asked if we could bid on our own jobs. I said, okay, you're going to put this out to contract. I'd like to bid on my own job. And he denied me that opportunity and would not respond to correspondence about that. And then I drafted a resolution against outsourcing. And it was a struggle to get it, to present it in front of my union. It took 3 months. It didn't pass till August 14th, 2013. And from that point on, it was blocked. It was not, even though I'm a member of the Alameda Labor Council, I was not allowed to advance it at the Labor Council. I was told that it had to go through the proper channels at my union, even though there were no channels provided for in the bylaws. This was something that was pretty much arbitrary. It was blocked from going to other sections, even though I had sponsors at it. And then when it went to the Officers Council, the leadership basically tabled it indefinitely while administrative problems were allowed to exist with training, to the point where, guess what happened? Little branches of training that we provide were starting to collapse and were outsourced to, guess who? NCTI, the education arm of America's largest ambulance company, AMR. The previous, who my boss had previously worked as a contractor with. So that pretty much continues to this day. I just came off a 1-week suspension for about a 68-page suspension document that includes a medically protected. I've been suspended partially for approved use of medical leave, which I'm appealing. I filed a PERB complaint during my suspension because idle hands, need something to do. And I filed it on my own behalf, and my union took issue with the fact that I used my title as provided in the bylaws, political director for the H&M section, and because I think that they don't want they want to control this dialogue. And I'm concerned that through the political lines of power, being the city manager, city supervisors union, that all the lines of power go to the same place, which is the city council and the mayor's office. So, fast forward to the present day, just late last month, I sent my supervisor a concern about the department standardization for nebulizers, for use of inline nebulizers for pediatrics. We were conducting some training, and they found an area where it could benefit from some standardizing in use of emergencies when children are unconscious and need to be hooked this up with a bag connected to tubing and medication. He didn't respond to my concern. In meetings in early October, I suggested we include this sort of thing in training that's coming up this Monday. The ideas get tabled, other ideas get moved forward, such as narcotics, infection control, Ebola, that sort of thing. This Friday, yesterday, we have a meeting from 10 till 1 p.m. discussing what sort of training we'll have on Monday. At 4:30 p.m. yesterday, Sean, you don't have this training ready. You knew that it was supposed to be 3 hours. It's due Monday. So what I would think a reasonable person could consider set up for failure circumstances. So I write back, hey, I'd love to be able to work on this. You're also requiring me to work without pay on Saturday morning to teach first aid class for our citizens, which is what I was doing this morning. So I don't know if I can complete this to your satisfaction in this timeline. I guess maybe we'll just have to use the language from the document, the original document on Monday, or that sort of thing. So, I think he's been very successful in my impression is, in creating a administrative. Oh, and by the way, I'm required to keep a 10-to-1 student-to-instructor ratio for first aid classes. I don't have any instructors because I don't have any employees, because he hasn't responded to any of my requests for hiring. Instead, he's required that I do my employee jobs, which is one of the reasons I have to teach on the weekends without pay. And then I have to keep these 1-to-10 student-to-instructor ratios, 19 students in today's class, all of whom claim they signed up for the class. I don't have the sign-in sheet. And the sign-in sheets are supposed to be kept less than 10, as agreed on upon December 4th, 2013. So this fabled catbird seat of being able to create administrative problems with training while having this plug-and-play solution, which is let's take this measure-funded money and outsource, is really interesting considering how politically active the city of Oakland is, and I think that just people don't know about it. That's it.
I work for the Department of Public Health for the state of California, and I'll talk about condition of state workers in particular. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see what I've presented here, but I do have a few graphs that I brought, and if people want, I can email them the whole PowerPoint at the end, so you can just give me your emails. I'd be happy to send it to you. We've had quite a presentation here today, and the way I like to understand things is I like to work from the particular to the general and then back from the general to the particular. And we've seen many cases of the particular imposition of the austerity through privatization. That's why we're discussing privatization here today. In education, particularly in most of the discussions here, but we've had other meetings where we discussed the Veolia situation, the privatization attacks against public transport. As a public worker in the department, what we see is that there are many positions that are outsourced for long-term periods to private contract firms. Why? Because they say, well, we can't hire people. It's one thing to bring in an emergency contractor to clean up a mess or do something that needs to happen toot sweet, or it's another thing to put somebody in a contract position through another outfit and keep them there for a large portion of their career, 10, 12 years as a contractor. And what that means for the state, and for state workers in particular, is you take them out of the CalPERS system and you put them in the 401k system. And we were also talking a little bit before about how the 401k is the preferred system of retirement that the ruling class wants to impose and take away the defined pension system that teachers have, that public workers have. We saw what they did in Detroit. And before this, we saw what they did with Bethlehem Steel and in the private sector. So now they're saying, we want you as public workers to participate in the risk. These are the words specifically from Jerry Brown when he was running for office. He said, we have to reform the pension program, and we need to put you in 401ks, or at least put the new workers in 401ks, and that way you are going to share the risk. Share what risk? The risk of the market. Has anybody been looking at their 401ks recently? I don't know. It's your IRA, your 401k, whatever you might have tucked away. There is kind of this downward slope that's happening to people's savings. And so we see that that's the particular attack of the austerity against your pension, against your schools, against your health care system, driving the doctors out of public practice and into private practice. And this is amazing what you were just saying. You have this constant flow of young doctors coming in from the UC system. What happens to the ones that were there for 10, 12, 15, 20 years? They have the experience. They got the eyes on the patients. They see things that happened 5, 12, 15 years ago that somebody straight out of school might have seen in a textbook, but they haven't seen the dynamic of it. That's the same thing that we're seeing in public health, where I work as a member of Bargaining Unit 10, which is the scientific contingent at the Department of Public Health in Richmond. We see a retention and recruitment problem where people who have had their eyes on the microscope looking at these viruses and these bugs and these bacteria over years, and they're different strains. They're things that you say, oh, that looks familiar. Oh yeah, I remember. That was in 1983. Where's the guy from 1983? We drove him out. We can't retain him. He's working for Genentech. He's working for Bayer. Many of them are working for Kaiser on their other hours. Why? Because they're not getting a comparable wage. And that's kind of the particular for where I'm working. As a state employee, during this recession that started in 2007 and 2008, what we saw was a holding back, it was already being held back, of our wages pretty much across the board, and an attack on any public workers making gains. And so I brought these graphs here. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a graph of the gross domestic product productivity gap. And you see this drop that's kind of hard to see. It starts right at the beginning of the last the recession. The potential to produce is there, but they've dropped what they produce. And that same drop over the years, it's slowly starting to come back up. That was 7 years ago. The consequences of the recession, it destroys this fictitious capital. So I want to go back to the general in a concept. What is capital? It's about 3 volumes plus another 4 or 5 volumes by a guy named Karl Marx, and people think, oh, is it important? Isn't it important? Well, there's big debates about that. But in short, if it's not active, if it's not productive, if it's not in the realm of production, it starts to fall apart. It becomes fictitious. It sits there in hordes that aren't producing new goods, that aren't putting people to work, that aren't moving the engines of the economy. And that's what we've seen. And so you hear over and over that, oh, the corporations are sitting on vast wads of money that they can't invest. Why can't they invest it? So I'm going to invite people, and I'm sorry if it seems a little far-fetched, but I really think for workers to address the conditions that we're in, we really have to understand this. And a big debate that's going on among activists, socialists, political economists, Marxists in particular, is a debate. And if you read Monthly Review right now, there's an interesting debate between a fellow named Heinrich and a guy named Shane Madge, who in 1960 wrote his thesis on the tendency of the rate of profit to decline, which is one of the major contributions from Karl Marx in Volume 3 of Das Kapital, where he argued that over time, not in every day, but over time, the rate of profit declines, and it makes it harder and harder for the capitalists to invest and make a dime on a dollar. This is the situation that we're in today. And without going through these graphs that you probably can't see, what it does to us, and this is a graph of a series of recessions, and the red line is the period after the recession. And what you see, it takes longer and longer for the workers to actually get their jobs back and for productivity to return. And so if we look at all the recessions from the 1950, 1974, 1980, 81, 2001, each time, okay, you have an immediate drop-off of the amount of people that are employed. And then it kind of works its way back up. Now, it works its way back up both in time and in numbers, right? As we go back 4 or 5 recessions, they went down, they came back in a relatively short amount of time, and they kind of picked up with a short-term recession. We say that short-term recession, that period of recession, is when that fictitious capital is being destroyed. Fixed capital resources, machinery that was good 5 years ago is no longer technically capable today. The new science or the new technology has pushed it out of the way, so that capital is destroyed. Factories that are left fallow are destroyed by rust or non-use. Workers that had certain skill levels no longer have those skill levels, so that social capital of education is destroyed in the period of the recession, and then the economy comes back. But what does that really mean? They say the recession is over. Well, the recession is over for the capitalists when they can start deriving profits again. So contrary to the concept of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, we hear Bloomberg and say, the profits are at all-time highs. We're back out of the recession. But what you look at with the situation of the workers is that they've cut the schools, they've cut your medical care, they've cut your clinics, they've cut your school buses, they've increased your prices on public transit, they have held back your wages and that's where I want to get back to the particular for the state workers, and I think it's across the board, so it's not just about us greedy state workers, like they were saying, the greedy teachers who want to pick it out of the pockets of the public. It's about all of us that they are trying to drive down while they regain profitability. To their shareholders, they are concerned to a certain extent about GDP, but they're more concerned about can we make a profit on our investment. We lost that fictitious capital, it shrunk, but we can make a profit now. Do we have to employ as many people to do it? Not necessarily. Then we have marginalized communities. That's why you have the growth of the prison industry. In California, we have this beautiful X. Starting in 1979 with Prop 13, the schools were #1 in the country, and today they're number, what, can you be 53, right behind Guam? Somewhere around 49 or 48. At the same time, we had like 20,000 prisoners in 1979. Today we have 150, 160, and what are we doing to the prisons? We're turning them into privatized organizations where we'll set you up outside of town, send the money, and a corporation makes money off of it. So I wish I could stick to my PowerPoint. I obviously can't, because if it was up here, it would be much easier. So what I want to go back to, 2009, the recession kicked in, and they started attacking the schools. And the students walked out in Richmond, and they said, we need education. And how do the unions respond? In the public unions, where I was, the union leadership said, well, we have this team concept, we have to share the pain. So what they're not looking at is that, is that the entire crisis makes it impossible for the pain not to be put on us. And what they're basically doing, excuse me for catching my breath here, is I'm going to get right back to this debate. I started trying to introduce this debate between what we call either the neo-Ricardians on one side and the Marxists on the other. And the neo-Ricardians and the Keynesians on the one side are basically saying the problem is in distribution. There's plenty of money there. The capitalists have lots of money. All they have to do is put more money into schools and more money into jobs and more money for you, and it'll all be fixed. So what's the answer? Tax the rich. It's simple. It's simple. Except for the capitalists are having a harder and harder time to make a dime on a dollar. And that's where the Marxists say to the neo-Ricardians and to the Keynesians, that is not a solution. The only solution is to end this predatory mode of production of capitalism and to move it out of the way so that we can have a rationally planned economy that's planned by the workers themselves. Well, these are two radically different concepts, and if you have one concept that says we can reform it simply by taxing the rich, then all we have to do is elect those other 3 members of the school board, and then we can tax the rich. Or we just have to get control of the local city council, and then we can tax the rich. But it ignores the fact that the whole political structure and all of their legislatures and their councils are designed to perpetuate the laws and the rules that were put in place by who? Written by them in their interests and to perpetuate those interests. So the Marxists have a different point of view. They say the only way to get rid of this crisis and to put people to work, to have full employment, to have quality health care for all, to have cradle-to-grave housing. You know, people shouldn't die in fear and in hunger, and probably start to sound like Roosevelt, right? But of course he couldn't deliver, neither could his wife. No, so there's many people today who are telling us, thank you, that what we need is a new Rooseveltian movement. Then there's many people passing themselves as Marxists saying that that's what we need, is we need to carry out Roosevelt's program. Well, who's the we? Who's the we? The same people. So they're basically saying we can have a good protected capitalism. Now, so I want to try to bring it back to the particular and get to the specific situation of the state workers in 2009. Now, to look at 2009, we also have to look back to 2001, because in 2001 there was another recession, right? So we'd barely gotten out of the 2001 recession, and then we went into the 2008-9 up until when? Is it still going on? Well, for the workers, it still hasn't come back to the same level of employment, right? And to GDP is just barely returning to that trend line that would have continued, except for it dropped, right? So in 2009, what's the situation and condition of the working class? Our unions are totally tied to the Democratic Party. They just went through this big campaign where they broke from Hillary on one side and jumped on the Obama campaign on the other side when they realized he was going to win Pennsylvania. And they were mobilizing the entire working class to get out the vote, saying you're going to get the employee free trade, employee Choice Act that was going to make it easier to organize unions, but that didn't happen. Here in California, we had Schwarzenegger. He said, well, there's no money in the banks. Are we going to go after, you said 111, back then it was only 80 billionaires? Funny how during the differentiation between 2007, it jumped from 80 to 111 billionaires in California. He said, we're not going to go after the billionaires. Well, he didn't say it, but he did it. He said, we're going to ask you to continue this holding pattern that you've been in since 2001. So if you look at the cost of living increase in 2001, 2002, right up through 2007, it was about 34% year over year. The increases that the state workers had gotten put us 18% behind. So it went up 3%, the cost of living, the state workers would get 1.2%. And that kind of juggling went on up until 2009, and then they said, well, we got no money, we got to put you on furlough. So we're going to put you on 1-day furlough, we're going to put you on 2-day furlough, we're going to put you on 3-day furloughs. What's the union going to do? Well, I was a member at that time of the California Association of Professional Scientists. I went to the meeting and I said, what are you going to do about this one-day furlough? We're going to sue them. I go, you're going to trust these guys. They spend the whole day playing golf with each other, the judges and the lawyers, and you're going to sue them? No, they're not going to help us. And within a month, we had 2 days. Some old guy in the back of the room yells, we should strike. Of course, he's retired now. I said, what he said, that's the concept. That's what we have to do. We should strike. Oh, no, we're professionals. We don't have to do. We're not like those other workers. I go, you know, I got more respect for the janitor that cleans the toilet where I work than any elitist union leader who's going to come in there and tell me that I got nothing in common with that worker. Why? Because I know what they've done to intellectual labor, and we saw the college adjunct over here, and we see other professional, highly trained people. We've done is we've taken your elevated position and reduced you to intellectual labor that's commodified and sold on the market. That's what they're trying to do to everything. That's what they're doing to things that previously weren't profitable, and that's why they are forced to do this. It's not a choice. It's because it's harder and harder to make a dime on a dollar in a productive fashion that they have decided to, we're going to go into take things that were previously non-profit making and turn them into profit-making enterprises. So we go after public health, public schools, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, we see this in our departments and all across the state. When I first got to the state, I realized half the people in this department are contractors, right? Now, I said before, one of the problems is they're not paying into CalPERS. They're getting stuck on the end, and they're, what do you call it, at-will employees. Say something, you're out of here. At least I, as a public employee, have a little bit of protection. I can say a few things. So what were the unions doing in this, and why are they doing it? I'm going to try to wrap this up and bring it around to some kind of solutions, and why I think we have certain limits with the union leaderships that we have today in particular. And I agree with you completely that, I don't know if it was you, but someone said before, we need to keep the unions and get rid of the union leaderships. Now, the union leaderships have us tied totally to the Democratic Party. And I don't have to explain it to the folks here. Maybe the folks watching on YouTube don't know, but it's pretty clear if you look that the Democratic Party does the bidding for Wall Street and the 1%. When the Occupy people came out and said it's the 99%, it was Obama who was on the phone with Gene Kwan and the FBI and every mayor across the country that said break up these occupations and drive these people off the streets, right? And that's what they did. That's what the Democratic Party does when Wall Street is under attack. Why? It's not a mistake. It's their job. To get a change, that's why I'm saying to get a change, if the root of the problem is capitalism itself, we can't just get a change by making a small tax here and a small fix over here and begging for something, like you said, we have the team concept and we're going to reduce our demand to what we can. Let's just get in the door and we'll worry about the 25% we lost over the last decade once we're in the door. No, we have to look at how can we build a trade union movement that replaces the leadership today and takes the fight for workers' control of the means of production. That means fighting for a fighting workers' labor party that fights for a workers' government, because it's only going to be a workers' government that can say to the various industries that are owned by the multiple shareholders, put all these people to work. When? Tomorrow. Can't do it? Show me the books. Oh, well, we see all these billions that are being held right here offshore, and you can't do it, so we are going to take your company, we are going to nationalize it and run it under workers' control, and we're going to make democratic decisions about what should be run, how it should be run, and who can do it, in whose interest, who's going to write the plan. Right now, there is no plan. So just to wrap up, because I know we've been very tight, and I don't want to be repetitive for all the things that people have been saying, I'm arguing that we need a fighting workers' labor party with a revolutionary program, a program based on the transitional method, and that transitional method poses the concrete needs that the people have today. We all need jobs. We all need medical care. We all need education. We all need housing. How can we do it? We say 30 hours work for 40 hours pay. We say billions of dollars to put carpenters and apprentices to work building all the housing that we need for all the people. We say put tens of thousands of people into medical schools so that we can have the medical system that we need. Who's going to pay for it? We look to the shareholders. We say expropriate Big Pharma, expropriate the holders of the big medical companies and boards. And I know we're just about to push me off. Steve did say something about Ebola. I just want to say, because the scientific workers where I work are not paid pay parity, they are still 30% behind. Think about, are they 100% on spot when they're taking those test tubes of Ebola and looking at them? Or are they thinking about, how am I going to make my mortgage? How am I going to send my kid to school? Do you want your scientists doing that? Do you want your nurses worrying about making their mortgage? Or do you want them to be 100% on the ball and say, that's not proper PPE. You can't send that guy home. Just because you own this hospital, you can't send that guy home. We need an isolation ward now, and I need proper PPE, and I need proper training, and I need it now. That's the kind of unions that we should be having. That's what should happen when I call my union rep. Of course, I don't have a union rep, having been thrown out of the organization twice now. But thank you for your time. I think we need to build a workers' party.
I want to talk a little bit about workplace bullying. That's a phenomena that's going on through all the working class environments that we work in: transportation, nursing, schools. It all starts with the corporations. These municipalities call themselves public entities, or they're now corporizing, which changes from a public entity to a corporation. And they're trying to incorporate everything worldwide, trying to turn schools into public entity, from public to private entities. And we're all in this fight together. The thing is, what we have to do, that we have to come together and fight these privatizations, these corporations, and we have to educate the workers to come together. I'm just kind of thrown off guard right now. I was just coming to just listen and get myself educated. I wasn't prepared to speak, but what they're doing in San Francisco, they're trying to strip public transportation in its entirety. They're trying to pass a bond measure that's going to cut service, raise rents, raise property taxes, and force people out of their homes. This is another form of an eviction. And the workplace bullying in San Francisco started with long time. Various mayors: Willie Brown, Gavin Newsom, now Ed Lee. They passing the baton to Ed Lee now. And I think what really needs to happen here in San Francisco is we need to audit the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission awards these contracts for people to build homes and build businesses here in the city and county of San Francisco, and skyscrapers and stuff like that. And we have to demand an audit of this entity, because there's a lot of corruption in the Planning Commission, and part of that Planning Commission is it's going to cut vital services to the citizens in the city and county of San Francisco. Vital services, What really needs to happen is all the labor unions in the city and county of San Francisco need to write a letter of demand that this workplace bullying cease and desist, and that all funding to these public entities that they call like the SFMTA and things, it needs to cease and desist until they have some type of justice for their workers, and all the unions coming together to see to this happening. And the only way that this is going to happen is we got to put pressure on those board of supervisors downtown and demand that they audit the human resource department in the city and county of San Francisco, because there's a lot of corruption going on. When you stand up for something that's not right, they retaliate. They put in personnel that's for their interests and not people that's qualified for the position, that knows how the system should work. And they put people in place that has no control at home, and then they put them in a position of power, and then they abuse their authority by bringing them in a position of monitoring workers. And that's where it needs to stop. Leave your home business at home and bring your professionalism to the job. A lot of supervisors at the San Francisco Municipal Transit Agency, they shouldn't even be in that position. And a lot of things that they don't talk about is the mental illness that happens when you get bullied. Not only is it physical, it's mental. And those are the things that need to be addressed. A lot of these employers, they don't address mental illness because they don't want us to understand what causes it. And workplace bullying is a part of causing mental stress, mental anguish amongst the workers. And then let's talk about the drugs that Walgreens put out there, because corporations wants to speed up the production of the workers. That's caused mental illness. And drugs, then they put us in these mental institutions, and then they try to pump all these drugs into us and try to slow our thought processing down. And it's not about all that. It's about combating workplace bullying with these incompetent supervisors, these incompetent legislators that we put in office. And the people need to really stand up to these politicians and let them know that the same way you came in, the same way we can vote you in, we vote you out. So what we are going to do is we're going to draft up a letter, and we're going to stand at City Hall and submit this letter to the Board of Supervisors, demanding that they do a federal investigation of the employment working environment for all city employees, and to jail, prosecute all these superintendents, these department heads that allow these supervisors to do workplace bullying. Another thing that we need to address is how these people are appointed. We need to change that formula. They're appointed in by the mayor. We need to change that. We need to amend the city charter here in San Francisco to have our councils and boards voted in by us with our agenda, not the puppeteers of the mayor who's pushing the mayor agenda. The commissions, all of it needs to come from us. If we can start that here, we can start that nationwide. And once they see how it's modeled here, to change the formula of how the boards and commissions have been voted in by us and put out what we want, we can move over to Oakland, Richmond, Alameda, and we can change how the political structure in San Francisco, California, starting here first, and then we move nationwide. Then we move into the White House. That's being said and done. We need to start by putting together our own party, Labor Party. And when the capitalists want something, no, you need to show us the books before you get anything from us. Because every time they get something, they're coming after us. The working class, the workers, cutting services, cutting vital services, cutting vital services that patient and I really think that my personal opinion is that guy that died from the Ebola, he could have been saved. But the capitalists wanted to divide us, and that's a form of division. Let this guy save this guy, work on these three here, and that sends a divide. So we all know the police. We need to restructure how the police is too. The police basically are here to protect the capitalist interests. They're not here for us. They're not our friends. They're not our family. Well, we need to stand up to them and unite with the people in Ferguson, nationwide, and talk about stopping the police brutality, because that is a form of mental workplace bullying also. And another thing is that's going on, these employers, they discipline their workers prior to the workers starting to do work, and that causes injuries because the worker is stressed out now. That's a form of mental workplace bullying. They can't get their job done because they're worried about the disciplinary, worried about how they're gonna feed their family and things. These capitalists, they pump fear into us. They pump fear, and we gotta let them know that we're not scared of you. We control you. We control you. Without our labor, you can't exist. So as soon as we all get that frame of mind, we'll be very successful in taking down the capitalist system by any means, by all of us together, starting with the people in this room, educating the people that's out there that don't know what's going on. Thank you.